Hello, and welcome to another Xerocraft tutorial with David Olson. Today I'm going to be doing Blender. And specifically with Blender today, I will be showing you how to do animation and physics animation, or using physics to make an animation. So let's get started. I'm using Blender 2.74, it's the most recent version out. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the animation, like how to control timeline, play, stop, rewind, how to insert keyframes, like actually how to make this move along a timeline. So let's get started with that. So this down here, this is all the defaults. I haven't changed anything. This is how it'll look when it first starts. This area right here is your timeline. Now these are the play buttons. If we hit play, it goes through the timeline. And you can see right up here the frames per second, so 24 frames per second. Now you can see nothing is happening, because obviously we haven't animated anything yet. So I want to stop, go back to the first frame. I apologize for my sniffing, it's allergy season, so yeah. Okay, so let's say I want to animate this. So I want to make sure I'm in camera view. I'm going to hit the 0 on the number pad, so that I'm in the camera view. This is what the camera is looking at. I'm going to right click, select the cube, hit G to move it around, and I'm just going to set it just right here. This is just to show you how to do simple animation. So since it's on the first frame, I want to assign that as its position on the first frame. So I'm going to hit the I key, the letter I, and it's going to bring up Insert Keyframe menu. Oh, first, before I do that, I'm going to hit the N button to bring up this little window, which you can also do by left-clicking that plus sign. We're going to be keeping an eye on the location, that's where it is in space, the rotation, so how much it's rotating around, and the scale, so how big and small it's getting. So these three are important when you're using the keyframe. So again, back to where I was, I'm going to hit the I button, Insert Keyframe menu. Now I can choose location, so it'll put a keyframe on location, or rotation or scaling. I can also combine them with location rotation, location scale, location rotation and scale, or just rotation and scale. You can either combine just one at a time, or two at a time, or all three. Now these other ones here on the bottom have purposes, but these are more advanced, so we're only going to stick with these. And really, these three are just the single location, rotation, scaling. These two and this one double up, and this one is all three. I'm not sure why they don't just move these around. It's also confusing. Anyways, so I'm just going to do location. So I clicked that, and you'll see that this went yellow. Now, if I go to the next frame, I'm using the arrow keys here. I'm going to hit the right arrow key, so I go to frame number 2. And that's how you move individual frames, is left and right. So I'm just moving back and forth here. So on frame 1, you'll see this yellow, but if we go off of frame 1, you'll see it goes green. That means yellow is, this is its assigned position on that frame. And green is just the in-between between a keyframe, which is what this is, and the next keyframe. So you'll see that these numbers aren't changing. But now I'm going to go to frame 60, just for the kicks and giggles of it. I'm going to move this right here. I'm going to hit the I button again, and make location right there. Now, if I hit the left arrows, you'll see that it's moving, and these numbers are changing because it's calculating out where it is in between these two frame spots. So now, if I hit play, hey look, it's moving! Yay! Our first animation! It's so amazing! Now, I'm going to show you the same thing for rotation. I'm going to hit I, hit it for rotation. Again, it goes yellow. And just for the sake of this, just so it's easier to animate, this right here, this is the start technically the animation starts. So you could have a start, you know, up here at 135, but it shouldn't rather go higher than the end, because then that's like the end point begins before the start point, and that's just maddeningly unhelpful. And plus it bumps the end time up, so it's whatever. So start time, just keep it at 1. But the end, since I have that at 60, I'll just make that 60 just to make it easier on everyone. Just so it's... Oh yeah, and it loops around. If you just leave the play button, it'll go all the way to the end frame and then start back on over. That's how the animation works. Okay, so again, I'm going to hit the I key. Okay, rotation, I already did that. I'm going to jump to the last frame. That's what this button does. And I'm going to hit the R button to rotate it around a bunch. Doesn't really matter what. I'm going to move it over a little bit. I'm going to hit the I key, and I could just do rotation now, but since I also changed location a little bit, I'm going to go to lock rot. So that'll assign it the location and rotation. It's not that it's a different key altogether, it's just assigning both of these in a single button. So that's really all it is. It's 2 functions in one. Okay, so if I go back, suddenly we've got rotation going on here. Now I'm going to hit the I button and do some scaling. Scale there, go to the end, hit I, hit scaling. Now you'll probably notice that I didn't actually make that smaller. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to frame 30, so right in the middle. I'm going to scale it down and hit I, and I'm just going to do scaling. So now everything else is calculating out as far as where it is, how it's rotating, but just the scaling is going to be affected here in the middle. So if we hit play, it rotates around and gets bigger. So these are the primary everything you need to know about animating. Yeah, as far as keyframes and moving things around, rotating them and scaling them, how to insert keyframes, that is the bread and butter. That's everything. Anything more than that is just, you know, hotkeys and practice. But everything you need to know, that's it right there. So, having learned that, let's go ahead and start up a new file so I can teach you physics. And then we'll do a little bit of animation and physics. So, the way physics works is something falls, it bounces around, it, you know, gravity affects it, does it float, you know, those are physics. So right now, if I hit play, nothing is happening. I mean, I can animate it to where it's like, hey, bouncing around, blah, 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 but that's not physics. So, right over here, conveniently, there's a physics tab. It is also something you can control with this tab over here, the physics tab. What we want to call this is a rigid body. That is what Blender calls a physics affected object. Now I can also do it from here, so I'll show you both ways. It depends on your preference, but really they're doing the same thing. Whatever I do here will be affected here and vice versa. So we have here the tools add active and add passive. The difference between the two, add active is it'll move on its own. So if I click add active, you'll see that some options just popped up here. And if I hit the play button, oh look, there it goes, it's dropping, bye-bye, forever, in the dark hole abyss that is forever. So, you'll see that it's now highlighted green to show you that it is now physics affected. Okay, so if I just hit the play button, like you saw, it'll just fall down this never-ending pit of no return. So I'm going to give it something to fall onto. So I'm going to hit Shift-A to add a plane. I'm going to scale that up a bit, move it down on the Z-axis, just below it. Now I'm going to make this one a rigid body also, but I'm going to make it passive. Passive means it is still a physics item. It is still responding to physics, but it's not moving. It's just, it's like the ground. It's not going to move, but it'll still catch something if something falls on it. I will demonstrate. If I hit the play button, oh, look, it stops. But you see that the plane is not moving. If I move this up a bit, maybe rotating around so it's not, just flat falling, hit play, you'll see, boom, and it straightens out. Just like you would think it would. So, pop, pop, pop. Now, this is acting just as it's a box, it has weight, there's no bounciness to it. So if I added bounciness, now it still doesn't bounce around a whole lot. So it's got a little more boing to it, but it's still just a box. So here, I'll add a ball. How about that? Rigid body, active, bounciness. Okay, so you see it's kind of when it hits, it boinked up a little bit there. That's how the bouncy feature works. If I turn that all the way down, then animate it, it just bump. Oh, it still does. Ignore that. More on that later. Okay. So, that's the difference between active and passive. Now, if I wanted to create something that has an actual dimensions, like, say, the monkey head, and I did rigid body, and got that playing, it doesn't quite respond the way it should. I mean, you're looking at this thing like, oh, look, there's shapes, and here's curves, and there's sides. But this is working under something called convex hull. This is the rigid body collisions as far as how it collides with other objects. This is assuming that it's like a ball shape, or it's a cone shape, cylinder. So it has all these preset conditions like, is it just a box? Is it just a sphere? But if it has like grooves and internal dips or even holes, like I'll show you how to do a chain link here, and this is how this is going to apply to that. You're actually going to set it on mesh. So let's make this a little bit bigger so there's more falling space. So now it's actually rotating and curving and pivoting differently than it did before. Oh, also, one important thing. Since we are working with physics-related things, we want to change the origin point of everything with this. Set origin typically is set to geometry, but we want it to be the center of its mass. It's a very specific origin set point. That's, think of your body, where your center of gravity is. That's the same way in this physics world. So make sure with everything you have, you set the origin to the center of mass. Okay, and I'll show you how that makes a difference. You may not see a whole lot of difference, but that's where its center is. If I let's set origin point to the 3D cursor. I'll show you how it goes there. See, it's using that point as its center mass, and obviously, visually, well, that's not right. So that's why you want it to be the center of its own mass, so you can look at it and say, oh wow, that's really realistic. Yeah, that's totally the way it would be in real life. So just remember that. Okay, so that's how you do active physics, passive. So let's do a short little animation sequence here. Alright, let's reset to default values. So the cursor's at 0. I'm going to add a torus. This is a donut shape, but we're going to use these as the links of a chain. Alright, so let's go to major segments. I'm going to set this to something real simple. 20, 14, sure. And minor segments. It doesn't have to be anything like really high definition. In fact, the less polygons, the better, because the more you have, the more lag it'll have on your computer. So don't be afraid of going low resolution with things like this. You can change that later, and I'll show you how to do that. So something like this, 14 major segments, 12 minor segments. Don't have to worry about these. So that is good for now. That fits our purposes. I'm going to go into tab, go to edit mode, and since this is a chain link, I'm going to hit number pad 5 to go into orthographic view, so it's a 2D view. I'm going to hit Alt, right click to select these lines right here, and let's also grab those. I'll hit G, and we'll hold down the control button. G and X, hold down the control button to move it just once over. Or twice over, excuse me. Okay, so it's not a beautiful looking chain link, but it fits the purpose of what we're going for. And it's just simple how-to, so you can do your own chain links. We want to also make this a triangle mesh. It makes the animation process much smoother, and technically it's the proper way to do it. So I'm going to hit A to select all. I want to make all of these square quad faces into triangles, which sounds like it's an impossible task. But there's a cool little feature for that. It's select everything and hit Control T, and it will automatically create triangle faces in all of these quads. And you can, if you want, hit this button, Smooth Vertex, to just smooth everything out so it's not so, low polygon looking. It's up to you if you want. Actually, I think just once will do just fine for me. We'll see how that does. I actually never tried it with the smooth vertex before, so this will be an interesting test. Okay, now I'm going to introduce a modifier. First, I'm going to rotate this around 90 degrees. Which, by the way, if you can't tell how many degrees it is, keep your eye right here while I'm rotating. It'll show you the degrees. I'm holding down Control, so it does it in increments of 5. So I did that at 90 degrees. Or you can just hit R, 90, done. Or RZ, 90, excuse me. Okay, so let's introduce a modifier tab. This is the blue wrench. I want to introduce an array modifier. Now, before I get too much into this, I actually want to do one thing. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate this. I want to move it along the x-axis. Oh, why is it not doing that? There we go. And move it to about right there. Rotate it along the x-axis at 90 degrees so that we have the beginnings of our chain link here. Now, I brought up this array tool, and what this does is just extends out the model however many times you want. And this affects where it starts copying it along this axis, along the y-axis, along the z-axis. Now, don't confuse this for the mirror. It's not quite the same thing. Mirror just copies the object on the origin point. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll describe it like this. What the mirror does is just copies on the flip side of the origin point. So wherever you move this, that's where it is on the mirror side. Don't confuse it for that. This just copies the object an infinite number of times as you want. It could be, you know, a very, very, very long chain. We don't want it that long. Maybe, sure, that long. Sure, 15. But we want to keep some distance between the chain links. About right there is good. I'm going to move it just a little bit more. That's good. Alright, so if you are satisfied with that, you can hit apply. Now, before hitting apply, you'll see it's just these two. These are the only things that I'm affecting, and it'll affect the rest. But if I hit apply and go into tab, it's now created everything as a mesh. Now, this is all just one single object, and if I hit tab, these are all inside the same mesh. But I want these all to be their own individual links. So I'm going to hit tab and select all. I want to teach you another feature. It's called separating. I'm going to hit the P button. Now I can separate these by selection, by their color material, or by loose parts. That's the one that I want to do now, because none of these are touching, none of these are combined. They'll all break apart as their own individual objects. So I'm going to select that, and you'll see that in object mode, these are all their own individual pieces, but they all still share the same origin point. Now, I actually jumped a little bit ahead of myself. I needed to do one other thing first before they're all separated. I'm going to make them into rigid bodies. Otherwise, I'd have to do it all one at a time. So I'm going to make it into an active. I want to change the shape to mesh. That way, since it's a hole here in the middle, it'll take in that hole when it's doing the animation. Otherwise, it'll just blow up and things will go scattering around. It's not pretty. So I like where everything is. I don't have to change anything else. They're all active. They're all on mesh. So now I'll go back into tab, separate by loose parts, select all, set origin point to center. Oh, crap. Set origin to center of map. Why is it doing that? Set origin point to geometry? Why? I don't know why it is doing that. Oh, it's because I was not on the first frame, and they're all... Okay, you have to be on the first frame when you do the center, because it's assuming that you're animating when you're here in the middle. So be on the first frame, select all, center of mass. Okay, now we're good. But now, since we want this to be a swinging chain, I'm going to select this chain link right here, and I'm going to set that as passive. Oh. Alright, so I want to set that as passive. Alright, so all my preparation work is done. And I'm going to cross my fingers, hit play. And look at that. We have a swinging chain link. And this will go all the way to 250. And, oh, look, it broke. If you have instances like that where obviously it's all still connected, it shouldn't break apart right there. Let's see, where does it do it? Right there, these two links. You can go to this tab, the scene data. Here in the rigid body world options, you have steps per second. It's like the number of calculations it does every second to correctly animate your scene. As a default, this is set to 60 and solver iterations at 10. I'm unsure at the moment what the difference between the two is, but if you turn that up to 150, just really beef up the calculation portion of it, it'll go slower, but it will be more accurate. So that's the cost of doing animation and rendering stuff. Is if you want it to look good, you gotta suffer through the time. Gotta do it. All right, and now we don't have a broken chain. Sweet. So that is how you get a swinging chain animation. Just something very simple. Not like back in the day when they had to animate every link at a time, doing the whole, in location rotation, every frame by frame. That, oh, what did I just do? I just did something. Delete keyframe. So yeah, it's way easier than it was back in the days of, the first Pixar movie or something. So to animate this, you just go into your camera view. I'm hitting Shift F so I can move around my scene. And I'm using the ASDW keys, from classic video gaming. And from here I can set my camera angle to be where I want it. Go into my render scene. And if I actually want to animate it right there, I can hit F12 and it'll come out with a picture. This is the resolution here, so if you want it to be HDTV 720, the different resolutions. This is the dimensions of it, the quality of it. The output is where you want the image to save. So I'll have it save on the desktop. Compression, so make sure the image is compressed. And hit F12, save. Now this hasn't actually saved the picture yet, this just rendered it. From here, if I hit F3, then I can actually save the picture, go to desktop, and save the image, save as image, minimize, and here's my picture. So that is how you create an image. Now if you wanted to do the entire animation sequence as a video, that does take a lot more room, and you would use the animation feature, but you would animate them all as PNG images. Do that rather than JPEGs, because PNGs take up a lot less memory. Desktop, or rather instead of desktop, actually create your own new directory. So just new folder, accept, and then you start at the beginning, click animation, and it'll go frame by frame, and you'll see that it's right here showing what current frame it's on. Now this will take a long time, but you see that it's going frame by frame. And if I go to my desktop, new folder, you'll see that this is the current ongoing progress of my animation. And this will go until it reaches 250. But given that my computer only has about a gig left of memory before it's dead, I'm not going to do that. Rather, I will just show you what a 19 frame video entails. So from here, I would actually go to this button up here where it says default. I'm going to click the tab next to it. I'm going to go into video editing. Now we've never seen this window before, but I'm going to be focusing on this area right here. So I'm going to hover the mouse cursor over here, hit Shift A. I'm going to add image. Click that. I'm going to go find the images I just made, my new folder. Now there's 19 of them, so I'm going to hit A to select all. I know the start frame is going to be 1, and there's 19 frames, so I want my end frame to be 19. Hit enter, add image strip. Now I'm going to end 19. Okay. So this is basically nothing, it's just that, but still for the purposes of teaching you how to do it, it's still the same. Alright, now I'm going to go back to that default where we were before. This is the scene. On the render tab, I'm going to scroll down and select here under the output section where it says the PNG. That's what we did first, but now I'm going to go to this option, H.264. I do not know what that means, but it is the option that is required. Make sure RGB is selected, so you keep the color data if you had any color data. So this is what compiles pictures into a video. Now you may have seen that you could have just animated all of this as an AVI JPEG or a RAW video, but then your video would have been like 500 megabytes large, whereas this will be much smaller. So this is just a much more compacted size video for what you need. So these two are selected, and now I'm going to go to animation. You'll see this is much faster, and it's already done. Because it's not rendering the pictures, it's just compiling the pictures into an actual video. So let's go and find that. Oh, it's already here. And now you'll see that it's a video file. And one thing I did just gloss over, I apologize, the frame rate. You can control right here. So if you want it as the default 24 frames per second, cool. You can even go as high as 60. That'll be very smooth animation, but it may also be very, very fast. So, you have to tread lightly when you're working with something that high. Your animation is going to be very slow and painful to watch, but when you put it at 60 frames per second, it's going to be very, very smooth. But typically, 24, 30, you'll be safe with that. Alright, that is the basics on how to create an animation based off of physics simulation. I hope this was informative. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Stay out of drugs and enjoy. Bye.